Welcome everyone, I'm Dr. Hector Vasquez, and this is the first video in a series of videos that I'll be recording over the dissertation process. Oftentimes, students feel overwhelmed with the process of writing a dissertation, so in this series of videos, I will be covering chapter by chapter, component by component within each chapter, and how to properly write and structure each component to have a successful dissertation. So to begin, we are going to start with chapter 1, which is the introduction. So the introduction has many bullet points that you need to cover within the introduction of your dissertation. In the introduction, you should begin with a brief overview of the general topic. And I say brief because you are going to elaborate on your topic later in your dissertation, specifically in chapter 2 when you get into the literature review. So as mentioned, you want to begin with an overview of the general topic to establish the context of the study and orient the reader to the field. Just give them an idea of what you will be doing your study on. You want to describe the larger context in which the problem exists. So in a sense, a broader overview with background information, but also that background information has to come from studies that have already been conducted in the field. You want to present an overview of why this research topic is relevant and warranted. There has to be a reason for the research, and the reason cannot be because I think it's important. That has to be backed up by other studies and other data and research that have already been conducted, again, within the field that you are choosing. You also want to briefly explain what research has been done on the topic and why the topic is important. Again, I emphasize not important to you, but important as in general, as a whole, okay? Who does this, problem impact? Why is this study important just to the general population? Not so much why it's important to you, okay? It's important that we do not include any of our opinions in the dissertation. That is a very key, something that you need to keep in mind. When doing a dissertation, we do not put in our own opinions. It's supposed to be an unbiased study that you are conducting. As I mentioned, you clearly want to lead the reader to the problem statement, which follows the introduction part in chapter 1. The reader should not be surprised by what the problem is described later in the document. So clearly in your introduction, after reading that, the reader should have a clear indication of what the problem is and where your study is headed. And as I mentioned, do not explicitly state the study, problem, the purpose, or the methodology, as those are going to be discussed in subsequent sections. Okay, we're not, in the introduction is not to cover everything that you're going to be doing your study on, how you're doing the study, what instrument you'll be using. It's just a brief introduction again to what you will be conducting, but not in great detail. One important piece of information and advice I provide many students is when you are doing your dissertation, at the beginning, your first 3 chapters are considered the proposal. Since your study has not yet been conducted, you should be writing in future tense. So, for instance, this study will address this problem, will focus on. Everything should be in future tense because once again, you have not conducted the study. Now, once your study is completed and your dissertation is done and all 5 chapters are complete, you then have to go back and change everything to past tense. So this study focused on, the problem addressed. So everything has to be changed to ED, past tense. Again, that's something that is important to know, that in the beginning, when you are writing in the introduction, the problem statement, the purpose statement, all the way through your dissertation, before it is completed and your study has been completed, you must write in future tense as the study has yet to be conducted. Also, as I mentioned, there are no personal opinions in the dissertation. All work must come from cited sources. So regardless if you have prior knowledge because you work in the field that you're conducting your dissertation in, you may have an idea of what you believe the results will come out to be, but you cannot include that in the dissertation again because the data has to speak for itself. And oftentimes we want to mix our passion, something we're passionate about in the field, and try to not so much sway the data, but input what we believe will be the results, and you have to eliminate that. Again, your job is to report the results as is, nothing more. Let the data speak for itself. So with that being said, I'm going to show you a dissertation. In this case, it is my own dissertation, and exactly how it's structured in the introduction and each component, and how you can address each of these bullet points. So looking here at chapter 1, my study, to give you a brief background on what my study was on, it was on the impact that social media had on investment decisions within individual investors. So ideally, I was looking to gauge the behavior of individuals when using social media and how what they read on social media impacted or influenced their decision making with their own money when it came to investing. So I would see people on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, so on and so forth, with influencers or just, information they saw on social media that they would follow blindly just to make investment decisions. So just to give you some background on that, so you can, when going through my dissertation, you'll see how I address these components in this introduction. So chapter 1, as I mentioned, the introduction here, the first paragraph to the introduction is again an overview of the general topic. Okay, the first two sentences, if you read this introduction of mine, I'm clearly just stating what the stock market is. Nothing too specific, just a very broad definition of what the stock market is. The following two sentences, I establish what social media is and how it's used. Nothing more. Again, very broad, just getting started, okay? The next paragraph, I spend time describing the larger context in which the problem exists. As you can see, there are many in-text citations because, again, the study has to come from, actual sources, from prior studies that have been done. So you have to gather your information. It can't be just on what you've witnessed or what you believe. No, it has to be cited in prior studies. So as you can see, I have many citations in which I am describing the larger context in which the problem exists. I am, simply providing concepts, terminology that I will follow up with later in greater detail throughout the dissertation. As you can see, my first paragraph, or my first topic sentence, as I should say in the paragraph, is talking about random fluctuations because of market behavior. So that it gives you a slight idea that this is what I'm focused on, is the market behavior. Now, as you come down and scroll and I talk more about the larger context, you'll see that I'm talking about a psychological phenomenon referred to as herding. And herding is defined as the behavior of individuals who follow one another to justify their actions. So just from reading these key words, you're seeing that I'm talking about market behavior. Herding is a psychological phenomenon, again, associated with the behavior of individuals. So without even looking and getting to the problem statement yet, my study is focused on social media, investing, and just the behavior of individual investors. Now, getting into the next paragraph, I'm addressing, what research has been done and the topic and why this is important. Okay. Again, citing is extremely important because that is your proof that this is a valid study and valid claims that you're making based on prior studies that have been conducted. Okay, so here I am again providing some data from prior research. You don't have to include data if there's obviously not data that's relevant to your topic, but in this case there was for me. And so I've included some statistics here that again can be found in prior studies. Again, tying it into the topic and then again explaining why this topic is important. Okay, once I've pretty much covered these components, I can wrap up the introduction by providing a brief overview of why this research topic is relevant and warranted. Okay, if you read the first sentence, the topic sentence of my last paragraph, a qualitative study has the potential to identify the mechanism behind investor behavior. I am telling you that this is going to be a qualitative case study and the potential to identify the mechanism behind investor behavior. That right there is stating exactly what the purpose of this research is for. Okay. Now, the next sentence, investing is often defined as allocating resources such as money in hopes of receiving a profit in return. So now you also have investing. I am focused on identifying behaviors of investors and I'm defining what investing is. And then I simply end with the recent traction of meme stocks paired with the influence of social media. Investing has turned into gambling for many individual investors. Again, showing why this study is warranted, because a lot of individuals, instead of investing, they are gambling their money. And then I end by simply stating that this qualitative case study focused on identifying common themes within an online community to understand the effects social media has on investment decisions. So again, going through the entire chapter, or I should say the introduction in chapter 1, you can clearly see that I've started with a brief overview of the general topic. I then get into the larger context in which this problem exists. Again, citing sources to back up, your study and the validity to it. I then continue on to explain what research has been done on the topic and why the topic is important. And then I simply end by providing a brief overview of why this research topic is relevant and warranted. Typically, introductions can be anywhere between 2 and 4 pages. Again, this will depend on your chair, who is the head of your committee. When you're writing your dissertation, they will have their own page limitations and requirements. But this right here is a standard, template that I wanted to show exactly how the dissertation process was for me and the components that were required in my introduction. So just to wrap up again, start off your introduction with a brief overview. Don't focus so much on the details of what your problem is and what your study is. Just introduce the concept of what your study will be on. Because as you will see as we get later into the dissertation, you don't want to sound redundant by saying the exact same things. Save the majority of your work to emphasize that in chapter 2 when you get into the literature review, because that will take about 70 to 80% of your dissertation will take place in chapter 2 of your literature review. So in the next video, after this, I will focus on the problem statement and how to properly address a problem statement and writing it and structuring it so that it actually flows perfectly, because a problem statement is one of the easiest yet toughest things that many students face, because it has to be clear, concise, to the point, and it's usually no more than 1 page. So until next time, if y'all have any questions, please leave me comments, questions that you may have. I will drop my dissertation in the description if y'all want to access it, so you can look through it and just get a sense of what you may encounter throughout the process. But again, if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. And if not, I will see you all in the next one. Take care.